Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is, Real Late. And this is actually my first Real Late interview. And when I say that, I mean Real Late, the album interview. So how appropriate for it to be the first,
intro,
the first real voice that you hear on Real Late. And that is Vel from the West, Velda Wonder.
Yes, what's goody?
Yo, welcome. Thank you for coming through and blessing.
Yes, thanks for letting me come through right before the takeoff.
Yeah, on your way out. And of course we were supposed to do Summer Jam, and unfortunately that did not happen. Thank you to Hurricane Henri.
Was that the name?
Yeah, it's Henri. It's Henri is apparently a very classy French hurricane that did us in. But so I'm trying to think of how I first got put on. I guess Top Shelf Premium sent me a record. I don't remember which the first one was that he sent, but it was like he sent a couple of joints and I started playing them. And then I started having a conversation with Skiz, DJ Skiz, simultaneously, who produced that record. I reached out to him. And so that record was just a joint that you guys had been working on?
Yeah, so when I came in 2020, November 2020, when I released my last album, Trophy Wife, I came down to New York for I think like 2 weeks, and I met up with Skiz and we worked on like 2 or 3 joints, just kind of like just getting studio time in.
So how long had that been sitting around as it was?
The song, less than a year.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely less than a year, maybe like half a year.
And I heard it and I was like, right away, I loved the record. And then there's a little bit of a dispute between me and my girlfriend about who suggested it for the intro.
Oh, I heard she did.
See, she's always suggesting she did.
Yeah.
No, I think she may have. And I was like, oh. And so I got back to Skiz and suggested a couple little changes, like to the beginning, to start with the pianos.
Yeah, like that. Mm-hmm.
And let it build that way. And I got to tell you, I've told you this before, and I'm not just saying this because you're the person sitting in front of me, but that has arguably been the most talked about, of any of the people who people weren't as familiar with yet. Mm-hmm. You are hands down the one that people ask me about the most. And then one of the things that's interesting is that, like, I didn't even realize, I just looked around and saw a video from you as early as 9 years ago.
Maybe like at least 8 years ago.
Or 8 years ago?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So what's your story? Where did it begin musically for you? I know you're from LA, but definitely. Tell us the Velda Wonder story.
Honestly, I fell into music. Like, I always thought it was a big fluke at first because I had no aspirations of growing up and wanting to do music. I did like sing in choir, like elementary and whatnot, but I really didn't think I was gonna make music at all.
So you sung in choir just as a kid? Yeah,
as a kid, like up until high school, and then I feel like once I got into high school, I kind of found my way more into like graffiti. And so I went with that. I was always into hip hop, but graffiti was like my first real element in hip hop.
So is it safe to assume, or too basic for me to assume, that Vel 9 was what you were writing, or do we?
Something along the lines.
Very something along those lines.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Uh-huh.
And you were like a pretty hardcore graffiti kid, right? Like how intense were you? How up is Vel?
I mean, I got into it as I remember being in 8th grade and like writing on middle school bathroom walls with the permanent marker. So it started as young as that, and then just kind of like progressed. I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a lot of women who did graffiti. So I definitely, like, the first people who even like talked to me about it and wanted to do it with me were all like girlfriends of mine. We're all in like middle school just trying to. And
what neighborhood are we talking about?
I grew up in Baldwin Park, California.
And what is it, demographically, is it?
Like a Chicano.
It's a mostly Chicano neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
And is Graf just a big thing in general?
I would say like in most of Southern California, it's a big thing. Even in Northern California. Probably like all of California. But definitely where I'm from, yeah, it was a big thing. It was mostly like neighborhood tags. But I don't know, I think just our generation, we wanted to take a different step, and so we like started just doing graph and I don't know, doing bad things and exploring.
Other bad things, roaming the streets, running around, getting
Something
into just
Exactly.
trouble.
Yeah. I remember minimum days were like really lit for us.
And so when did it start sort of transitioning to you also then doing the music part?
So I think because when in like the graffiti community, hip hop is a very large part of it. So is like punk music. So I had a lot of like punk homies, and so is skating. So it was like one large family of like, you know, the other kids, and I remember going to hip hop shows like really young, like 16. That's like what I wanted to do.
What were some of the early hip hop shows for Velda Wonder?
Living Legends. Yeah.
So for people who don't know, by the way, we're talking like true West Coast underground.
Dilated
Peoples.
Yeah. Shout out Evidence.
Wow. And by the way, you have a show coming up with Evidence.
Yes.
What do you know the date on that?
September 24th.
All right, in LA.
In downtown LA.
Yeah. So underground at first for you it starts being like underground LA hip hop is kind of your world?
Yes. Not even just LA though. I've always like had some sort of like attachment to the East Coast.
Well, that's
a lot to do with my dad like played a lot of Biggie around me. Growing up, I was like really, really little. Like Life After Death was like my favorite album when I was like super small.
How old's your dad?
He is, how's my pops? 50. Shout out to my dad.
Okay, word up. Shouts to pops.
He actually was a DJ before he got my mom pregnant with me. He would like DJ, like he was like in a house, a party crew.
Oh, really?
Like, DJ all around like El Monte, Baldwin Park, La Puente, like LA, Long Beach.
And then you came along and he had to get a real job.
And then he got my mom pregnant and had to sell his equipment to support little me. So
wow. So it's perfectly full circle.
it is full circle.
But now
I know he thinks about it like that too. He's my biggest fan.
So yeah, that's one thing that stands out about you obviously is that you're from LA and yet your sound is what people consider to be East Coast. It's one of the funny things that sort of like one of the comments that people make about the album that no one would think is irritating, but I find irritating is like, oh, it's a New York album. Like, well, it's not really a New York album. There's the first voice you hear is not from New York, and there's Virginia, and there's different voices on the album. But yeah, you do sonically have an East Coast sound. Yeah. Is there anyone particularly that influenced you musically, or is it just sort of the sound that you gravitated towards?
Bahamadia is one of my favorite MCs. I've always felt like I kind of like followed her steps. Now,
is this more of your dad's doing, or is this just YouTube?
No, this is like me finding my own music.
Just like and was that through the internet? Like,
oh, definitely through the internet. Definitely through like pirating music and.
Now, do you go back?
Downloading.
Do you go back? Yeah. I was gonna say, do you go back as far as like downloading MP3s, like pre the YouTube era?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I can't remember what kind of device I had, but it was probably some like little iPod thing, and I downloaded like a gang along illegal music and would get like viruses all the time. But I would get the dope freestyles. There was like this really like 9-minute freestyle like atmosphere and like a bunch of heads from Minnesota. That was like one of my favorite things to listen to.
So you just kind of started finding that stuff on your own, and this is the sound.
It was like once the ball started rolling, and like it just kept rolling, and I found like gone into all kinds of underground music from all over the states, even like other countries. But I was really mostly into freestyling back then. Like I wouldn't write rap music, but I would definitely freestyle with my homies and stuff.
And where would you freestyle? I'm always curious when people say they freestyle. Was it bedroom freestyles? Is it lunch table? Take us through the freestyles.
I remember specifically like I would meet up with like 8 or 9 heads, and we'd be in a tiny little room like half of this size, and everyone's like on the floor, like a few people sitting on the bed, wherever you could like pop a squat really. And we would like have a bunch of black books out, and there was always some instrumentals playing in the background. It was mostly like DJ Primo or anyone really. And we would be waiting to go paint, but it wasn't really hot boy back then. It would like wait until at least 1 or 2 a.m. And we would just like hit books and freestyle for hours while we waited.
And did you stand out? Like, could people tell that? Okay, they were like,
Everybody was like, oh, you're not fair. Like, you're so much better than everyone else.
And
I taught myself how to.
How did you teach yourself?
Because I would like kick it around this group. They were called Super Friends. Actually, they're from the Valley 818, and they were all writers, which is how I knew them. But then they would be the first people who would freestyle around me. And I remember thinking, I was hanging out with them one day in the garage, and I was like, yo, I could do this. Like, this is dope. I want to freestyle. So I went home and I like just taught myself how to kick freeze. Really, I remember being in the shower and like just something like snapped in my brain like very quickly, and then I couldn't stop. Like I was just like a rhyming machine.
So how you're casually throwing out taught myself, but like what did that mean? Did you do anything? Did you have any like little tricks that you came up with? Was there anything specific, or was just I'm gonna sit in the shower and just always keep?
Yeah, that was it. It was like a hidden talent that I had unveiled. How do people who can freestyle manage to do so without going back to the same tropes over and over again? Or when you were young, did you often like I came say
in
the same thing?
Yeah, I came in.
I feel like I used to cuss a lot more, and as I like got older, I like would cuss less. So it was easy to like kind of line up words when you know you have like you can say a bad word that has 2 syllables in it, you know, just kind of like save little bars and whatnot. But I was fresh and super innovative and like just really going off top. And I would do the whole room thing, you know, like look around and like start rapping about Black Tims or whatnot.
Now, are you, not to put you on the spot, but are you comfortable still freestyling in most any setting?
Definitely not as much as I was back then. Once I started like actually writing music, I'm like such a complex thinker now. Like all I want to do is write like complex things.
And does it make it
it's very difficult to try and freestyle on the spot? But the time I do feel most comfortable freestyling is like when I'm with my girlfriends and we're just like drinking, like kicking dumplings.
And then you still do that. Here's what we're gonna do. Let's play a couple. No, we're gonna play not beats. I'm not gonna ask you freestyle right now. I'm gonna give you a pass on this one.
I was like, wait, we not.
No, not tonight. Well, I'll save that for a setting when it's a little later. There's beverages going around. This is
Well, it's got to be like the hip hop.
We got to get in the exact right zone. So what we'll do right now though is play a couple songs from Velda Wonder, and she's hanging out. It's real late. Hot 97.
Yeah.
All right. Velda Wonder is in the building on Hot 97. It's real late, and we're talking Vel. By the way, if you haven't heard before, she's the voice of the intro on my Real Late album, but also has a gang of music that's out there streaming everywhere. And I was watching an interview with you earlier, of which there's not a ton of interviews.
No, there's not.
Period. So
yeah, I did that on purpose.
Well, I'm grateful for that. I got to tell you, it makes it feel cool to do an interview, but. In the interview I was watching you do, I did not know until then that one of your records had been used on Euphoria.
Yeah.
So how did that come about, and how did it turn out to be how good a look did it turn out to be?
It was actually it's still my I think highest streamed song because of that show. I linked up with the distribution company for a couple albums ago. They actually released my last one too. They're called Create. They're from LA. And they like made it happen. Really, it was like such a random thing. That's my first placement, so I didn't expect that to happen. And I was in New York when I got the news, so that was kind of cool too.
I got to tell you, I didn't know that, but I watched Euphoria, and I now listen to your music, and it's funny. Whoever the supervisor is on that show. I don't even remember what it sounded like watching on the show. I have to go back now and watch it. Do you know which episode it was?
No.
Was it season 1?
Yes.
Oh, there only is one season. There's only one season so far. Yeah. They had the 2 little mini episodes.
The end of the season. Yeah.
Okay, so I got to go back. So aesthetically though, I already know it's such a great pick because when I think of Euphoria and what it's about, and you just seem like a perfect fit.
Makes sense, right? Yeah.
It's hard to explain why, but I already can feel a vibe of why it's a great fit. What are your aspirations musically? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, one thing that's interesting about you is you're gaining a following. You're doing it slowly over time, building.
It's like a real like true core fan base. So from that, just from like building genuinely. And
is this where you want to stay? You're making a lot of music with Underground Cats, YL, Starker, Zumo.
Shout out to the guys.
DJ Skiz. You've done records with Crime Apple before.
Yes.
So is is quote underground the space that you want to stay in? Do you not know? You're waiting to see what your path looks like. Like, how do you see Velda Wonder's career moving?
I would say like just more independent than anything else. I definitely don't see like, I don't know, it's weird. Like I don't think about myself in a mainstream path, but I could definitely see it happen. Like I feel like I could do anything really and it'll make sense. Cause I've made more music than just rap music. Like I do have like some like singing.
I just heard you singing on a record, and I was kind of taken aback by it.
Yeah, and it's under like a whole other name too. So like a lot of people don't even know that I have a whole album out under like just singing over like some boom bap joints.
Do you talk about it publicly?
Yeah, I just haven't really, but it's called Mellotonic, so it's like a really dope album. People love that album, like.
Mellotonic.
Yeah, Mellotonics.
Mellotonics with an X?
Mellotonics, MELOT, and then Tonics, TONICS. Yeah, it's with the producer named Fourth Beat. Shout out Fourth. And then me, and I'm just singing over some boom bap. And people really, really like hardcore love that album.
And so I guess it's the hardcore fans that know that all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people watching right now who enjoy Velda Wonder's raps and have never listened to Mellotonics before.
No, not at all. Like people like would be so surprised to even hear it probably.
So that makes me
like a cool little like thing. And I've also even made like some like ska joints with my homies band back in LA called the Paranoias. They're from South Central LA. And like I've sung some ska songs with them.
Okay, so suffice it to say, if you're making music under another name, you're comfortable living in a world where it's discovery is part of the whole thing. Like you want people to do a little bit of work to find your stuff.
If they find it, then they're like 99% of the time they're very happy that they found it, you know?
So I'd imagine it's an interesting time for you because you're growing as an artist. Your numbers on social media are growing, etc. But I imagine your style's so unique. Not only rap wise, aesthetic, who you are as a person, like you're just a unique character. So I imagine that even though you're an underground artist, you have certain fans that you meet who kind of freak out and are pretty hardcore Velda Wonder fans.
Oh, absolutely. All the time, actually. And I'm always like, wait, what's going on? Like, who are they going crazy over? And it's me. And so I'll be at like Walmart.
Who is that kind of fan? What do you know about fans of Velda Wonder? Is there anything you could say?
Honestly, they're dope. Like, I have like the sickest fans. They're always like these people who are doing nonprofit things for their community, their other fellow artists. Like every time I meet like a real like Vel fan, they're like way cooler than I am and they think I'm cool, and it's just like this circle of like great energy. Do
you have any notable amount of love from Chicanos and Mexican Americans?
Absolutely. But honestly, I meet fans of like every aspect of life. Like people who I would not think are like big Vel fans are like the biggest ones, and that's probably like the dopest part. I would have never think that somebody in Iowa was like a huge Vel fan. They are.
How much of the country have you done? I know you've toured a lot overseas. What are your main cities in the U.S.? Obviously, I'm sure LA and New York are number 1 and 2, but where else?
LA, New York, Texas, Arizona, Vegas, Washington, Colorado.
Chicago?
Oh, they love me in Chicago. I do numbers in Chicago.
What about from a Mexican American standpoint? Is there anyone in hip hop or musically that you enjoyed or looked to? I mean, because it's interesting historically. Obviously, Mexican Americans in LA are a core part of the hip hop world.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's not a ton of representation currently in the mainstream hip hop music.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was like when I first started coming out too, a lot of people tried to like label me under like a Chicano rap, but I never gravitated towards that. Like I know my background, I know my neighborhood, where I come from and my heritage, but I don't necessarily confine myself to just like my ethnicity or my gender.
Well, you definitely don't want, as far as labeling your music, no, that's trash. But like I don't think anyone should be locked into what their ethnic demographic is. But have you ever like spent any time with Cypress Hill's music or?
Oh, I was a big Cypress Hill fan, big Psycho Realm fan, and that's just like LA like driven music too,
I'm gonna ask you a question here, and maybe you're too young to know the answer to this. How big is Psycho Realm? Because Psycho Realm here, you'd have to be a pretty underground head to know about Psycho Realm.
Somebody told me that here, and I was like, yo, Psycho Realm is like, they're gods at home. Like,
really?
Yeah, everything is Psycho Realm. I actually performed at a Psycho Realm show.
Okay, I need to know more about this. I want to know where it was and what the Psycho Realm fan base is like.
It was, I don't remember where it was. It was a big venue, obviously. It was a Psycho de Mayo. You remember that show?
Psycho de Mayo is a thing?
Yeah, Psycho de Mayo. And it was like around Cinco de Mayo, but it was a Psycho Realm show somewhere in a big venue. And it was perfect. They loved me. I opened up. I was one of the openers, and I came out and I rapped. And I was, pretty nervous. Like, it's a Psycho Realm fan base. Like, everybody's wearing black and white and looks like they want to beat you up. And it was like, they loved me. Like, I remember rapping, and like, there was like people in the front trying to grab my chucks and shit.
This is the only Psycho Realm record I think I know is this. It's not going to be surprising for you probably if knowing what you know about my interest in hip hop. This probably won't surprise you, but this right here. Psycho Realm remix, beat rock, blowing up the spot.
Yeah,
check it out.
This song right here is dedicated to all of you motherfuckers that ain't with me right now.
Yeah, this is a joint.
This is the only one I ever played was the Pete Rock shit.
Yeah.
Because at this time in my life, I was just playing everything Pete Rock imaginable.
Yeah.
Because at the end, we all.
And that voice is monumental.
Yeah, yo, and by the way, you've already taken me to a hip hop place I'm excited about because I don't think I've ever had a Psycho Realm conversation on any of my shows or interviews. And now I want to know so much more about how impactful they are.
Yeah, very impactful. They like reached out to me in the very beginning of my career too. I went to like Big Duke's studio one time, like the very beginning.
I get very fascinated by the regional things that exist in hip hop.
Yeah.
Like there are certain like East Coast things too that like I take for granted and just assumed everyone was on.
Yeah.
And like I really enjoy that about hip hop, that as big and international as it's gotten.
There's like so many
there's
pockets.
Yeah, that you still have these pockets of things that just people don't really.
Yeah, like greatness.
Who else have you gotten to meet among the people that you admire?
I met all of Griselda. I actually met them very early on, in like 2018 when they first came to LA to perform. And they connected with me like right away. They were showing love on the gram, on like my new music videos, and they like always showed love.
And speaking of someone like Griselda, have you not had people attempt to sign you or bring you to their place, whether it's Griselda or otherwise?
I've definitely had like A&Rs and other like label people try to reach out to me, but nothing has ever really like sparked my interest, to be honest. I feel like all the work that I've put here is what they would do for me, and I already have it. So there is like certain deals I'd be willing to do, maybe it's like album stuff, but I haven't really like wanted to dabble into the labels too much.
So it's not something you'd rule out, but it's not something you aspire to either.
Yes.
I also picked up that something you're into is travel in general.
Yeah.
You just seem
travel junkie.
Yeah, that seems to be your thing. So where have you been recently? I mean, I know things have been crazy, but where have you gotten to go, and where do you hope to go when things kind of get normal again?
Almost a lot of the states. The states are cool. I like traveling within the U.S., but I've been to Tokyo. I've been to Peru.
Tokyo must fuck with you. Let's be real. Tokyo must fuck with you hard.
Oh yeah, they loved it. They're like big on hip hop and Chicano culture, so it was like a 2 for 1.
Hold on. They're also into Chicano culture.
Oh, they love Chicano culture there. I think they're called habaneros or something like that. Yeah.
Japan is amazing.
Yeah.
Japan, as you see on the wall here, I have that poster right there, that Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers poster. It's a go-go thing. It's a DC poster.
Yeah.
They're into go-go there also.
Yeah.
They're into hardcore. Anything that is like true American stuff. And I say that to say that Chicano stuff is true American stuff also,
absolutely.
Right? It's inherently American, right? It's Mexican American. They just eat it up. I DJ'd a gig there, and it was at a cool kind of club. Mm-hmm. So I was playing sort of commercial stuff. And by the end of the night, like people started coming up to me sort of being annoyed that I was playing like party music. Like they really wanted boom bap all the time.
Yeah. I had like a couple little shows there and like it was crazy. I felt like I was in the 90s again. Like they had like these big baggy jeans on.
And
like,
people will break too.
Tees. Yeah. And I was like, yo, this is like so dope.
So do you have a little bit of the feel like you missed out on the 90s? Like, do you feel like you were meant to be in the 90s?
No, I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I feel like I just embrace that and kind of bring it here, you know? Because a lot of the comments I hear from people are like, damn, I didn't think I would hear rap music again, or rap music the way it used to be until I heard you. So that's a lot of the comments I get.
Isn't it interesting? Like I got a lot of that around the album too. Like Lapsed.
The album was great.
Oh, thanks.
I love the album.
Really? Do you listen to it beyond yourself?
No, deadass. Yeah. Like I like listened to it and I was like, yo, this shit is dope. Like everyone is just all the songs, like they're all hitting. It has like a nice like nostalgic feeling to it.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that because I really wanted to give something that the kids who are listening to Underground today will be into, while simultaneously like the lapsed hip hop fan would be like, oh wow. And that's something that I was gonna ask you about, because you do meet a lot of people who, when they hear music like what was on the album or like what you're making, are kind of surprised. They're like, oh, this is still going on.
Yeah.
And like, I would argue there might be as much as ever. You just have to do a little bit more work to find it.
Definitely. Especially like here in New York. I definitely feel like that nostalgic like hip hop sound is very much alive.
How do you feel like I've always felt that LA has a thriving underground too that really appreciates New York underground as well. Yeah. How do you compare the hip hop cities that are LA and New York?
I mean, I think because just I've been in the LA scene for so long, there isn't anything like too new recently. Maybe I haven't like heard it, but I just tapped into like the local New York scene a couple years ago, and I feel like I'm like constantly finding like all these new dope people.
Would you ever live in New York, or are you LA for life?
No, I would come to New York. I wouldn't like retire here, but
you'd keep an apartment here.
I will definitely have an apartment here. That's the goal. Is within the next couple years is to be like very bi-coastal.